Hi everyone, welcome back. So we are talking about A Wrinkle in Time today, and I want to give you just a brief look at the author and the subgenres, and then we'll dig in to a tiny bit of background, and then we'll look at the brief summary of the book. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but I do feel for this book, I'm recording a talking head instead of a PowerPoint because, like the other books written after 1950 that we're looking at, it's a little bit more user-friendly. And I don't know really that it's not like some of the proto-science fiction works where if you didn't have any explanation, you would be like, what? They're in a ship and now there's women who are kind of part vines and now their ship is in space. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to follow, but we'll give you a brief summary anyhow. So, a little bit about Madeleine L'Engle. Madeleine L'Engle was born in 1918 in New York City. She really started writing from quite a young age, doing little short stories and poems and things when she was about 5 or 6 years old, really from the first moment that she could write. She attended Smith College and married in 1946 a man whose name I have in my notes, but I forgot. Hugh Franklin. Sorry, Hugh Franklin. They were married until his death in 1986, and he was an actor. So she wanted to make a living for quite a long time, and this is her first novel, and it was rejected over 30 times. It's very similar to Stephen King's story of, if you've ever read his book on writing, he put a spike in the wall and he would just put every rejection for the book Carrie on that spike, and it almost filled up and he was about to give up, and then it was accepted for publication. And something kind of similar happened here where a lot of her work was rejected for quite a long time. And part of it, I think, goes to the fact that in terms of subgenres, which we've been talking about for each book, it is this really crazy mix of subgenres. It's a little bit science fiction, it's a little bit science fantasy, there is space travel, there's a utopian world, there's a dystopian world. It's also sometimes categorized as faith-based fiction or inspirational fiction, and many people have challenged it because of that, because of some of L'Engle's beliefs that I'll talk about in another lecture. And it's also a young adult book, which I think I mentioned this in my next lecture too, that the idea of young adult as a genre, YA, really did not exist until like the late 80s into the 90s. You had a few authors in the 60s and 70s, Beverly Cleary, Judy Blume, and then Madeleine L'Engle, who are putting out a few books. In the 70s and early 80s, you get like problem novels. Go Ask Alice is a good example of this, but like a teen is having a problem and it's a problem that a kid might not have. So something like in Go Ask Alice, she takes drugs by mistake at a party. I think it's LSD or something like that, right? So books like that, but as a really distinct genre, we didn't really have that. We had books for kids and then you have books for adults. So a lot of people think that this book is really not appropriate for younger children, even though one of the heroes of the book is younger, Charles Wallace. And I think that's one of the reasons it was banned as well. But I'll get into more about why it was challenged, is really the word I should use, because banned is a little bit of a misnomer. But why it was challenged, I'll get into that more later. Another piece that I don't know if I really explained this completely or as clearly as I could have in those next lectures, is a piece of science that is used in this book, and that's Einstein's theory of special relativity. Einstein's theory of relativity is basically saying that time speeds up or slows down relative to how fast you move compared to something else. So if you are in a spaceship going at the speed of light, you would age much slower than someone who is back on Earth, where the Earth is just going very slowly around the sun. So the idea he had is that this curvature of space-time is related to energy and then momentum, this travel, depending on what matter and radiation are present. I talk about this in the other lecture, but one of the ideas is that you have two black holes, and if they're both pulled into each other's orbit, that they might start very rapidly circling each other, and this could cause like a ripple or a gravitational wave or a wrinkle in space-time. So L'Engle's book really kind of says that it could be possible to bend space-time either by time travel or by going very fast and using, here she's calling it a tesseract, but a tesseract is basically just a four-dimensional object. So they have this idea of an ant on a string. The ant wants to get from point A to point B, and to make that quicker, we're going to bend the string and have the ant cross immediately. If we, here we go, point A, point B, bend it together. My little face mask. So that's the essential idea. I go a little bit more into depth as to the complexities of astrophysics that are in this book. I'm an English professor, not an astrophysicist. So I just want to say that. But I did do a lot of research, peer-reviewed articles, as well as some internet explanations from websites to really try to understand these complex concepts. And I think it's important to note, I also, when I do those lectures, talk about those concepts in relation to how they're used in this book and how our understanding has changed since the 1960s. That's kind of important to understand. But the other thing is that I am an English professor, as I said, not an astrophysicist. So there are rudimentary explanations broken down so that you can better understand literature, not so that you can become an astrophysicist. And if you are studying astrophysics or regular physics or theoretical physics and I get something wrong, forgive me for that. But basically, you know, again, a lot of people think of this book as children's literature. We'll talk about that more. Madeleine L'Engle herself did not, and I think that partially that's because there are such very complex ideas here about religion, about science, about space-time, that kids can read the book as a fantasy and pick up a little bit of that, and adults who have maybe a deeper understanding can get more out of it than you could as reading it as a kid. So I hope if you've read it before and you enjoyed it, that you get more out of it this time. So let's talk about the plot itself. Well, we've been looking at this hero's journey. I think in this book it's particularly important because Meg is kind of the protagonist. I think we have like a group of people going on this adventure, but it really does focus on her. And she is a very angry, moody teenager. But it really, in some ways, is her coming of age story, which is another subgenre that I would put this book into that category. So the start and the call to adventure, we have a very slow burn as this book begins. We come to know the Murray family. It starts out with this cliche of a dark and stormy night, which is called purple prose. It's known as one of the worst opening lines in literature from another book from the 1800s. So a lot of people have tried to take this line and kind of see what they can do with it. So I think it's funny that she starts this way. But we see Meg, she's this very angry teenage girl. Her anger is in many ways justified. In some ways it's not, but in many ways it is, which is this like kind of proto-feminist idea as we move into the feminist movement of the 70s. Charles Wallace is her brother, and he is a young genius. They have the two that they call kind of their normal brothers, the twins, Sandy and Dennis. Their mother is a scientist. Their father is also a scientist. He is missing, but a lot of people in the town have assumed that Their family is weird. Their mom is weird for being a woman and being a scientist. Meg seems like kind of curmudgeonly and not pleasant to be around, especially for a girl. Charles Wallace is this weirdo genius kid who didn't talk in full sentences until he was 4. And then, so why wouldn't the father leave? Basically, that's the idea of people in the town. So Meg and Charles Wallace in particular face bullying because of their unique natures, because of their intelligence, and then because of this situation with their father, which of course makes Meg even more angry. The two of them meet a new friend, Calvin. He's Meg's age, possibly a little bit older. He's very popular, good at sports. He's also very highly intelligent, but he's kind of an outcast as well. He has 10 brothers and sisters. His family is quite poor. His mother is very harsh. And so, yeah, this book starts out a lot slower, I think, than people might remember. We have here a little bit of a setup, almost like an old-fashioned science fiction novel, where we really are given a glimpse of the real world before we cross this threshold. So, meeting the mentors, we have Mrs. What's-It, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Which, who is at first kind of unseen. The other two appear to be really nothing but kind of odd, possibly homeless older women. You know, back then homelessness was referred to kind of differently. So the idea that they're vagrants or bums crosses Meg's mind. Later, it's revealed to be that they are not human at all, but rather supernatural beings. Now, this is where some of the author's religious beliefs come in. They're kind of like, one of them was a star. They might be angels, they might be aliens, they might be angels and aliens, as if maybe angels are aliens. It's not entirely clear, and we have, again, this kind of mixing of genres, but they really do act as mentors. They're promising to give aid to the children as they go on this quest to find Meg and Charles Wallace's father. They warn them that there's an evil attacking the universe. They take them to various planets to show them kind of what this travel would look like and to get them to the place where they need to be. So then we have the challenges and the temptations as they hurtle through the cosmos. The group is traveling by means of a tesseract, which in this book is like a 4th or 5th dimensional phenomena that bends space-time. They see a variety of planets, a 2-dimensional world where they can't breathe because they're 3-dimensional creatures. It's a very small but very fun like little bit of the book. Uriel, a utopian planet, Orion, a planet where they meet the happy medium, who is like a psychic. Camazotz, a gray dystopian planet that's been taken over by It. This is 20 years before Stephen King's It, but it's an entity that's the embodiment of the black thing, that's evil that is taking over the universe. And then It'Shell, another planet trying to battle or fight against this black thing. So each of these planets provides an opportunity for this mixture of genres, and we have kind of challenges at every turn, and a little bit of growth as the group kind of realizes what their flaws are, what their strengths are, and they try to rely on each other. Then this abyss, this point of almost death, while trying to fight the black thing, Meg suffers a loss. Charles Wallace succumbs to some of his flaws as well. Meg suffers a paralysis, and she and her father are taken to It'Shell for her safety. So she recovers and then has this final change, and then we have this atonement. She has to overcome her faults and also kind of channel and use her faults to become triumphant. The children overcome barriers and they eventually return to Earth. I'm leaving out a lot of details because I want you to discover them on your own. A lot of details about what these planets are and the other kind of almost magical or supernatural aid that they're given. This book is great, I think, because it does mix these really heavy scientific concepts with fantasy, and we have centaurs, we have angels, we have then also science fiction, like aliens that are talking, and these different landscapes. And it's all kind of jumbled together, but in this really cool way. So when they return, the heroes are changed, but their adventures have only just begun. And this continues into the next set of books by Madeleine L'Engle, which she has this family go through a lot of other trials and challenges and adventures. So in terms of read-alikes, my favorite book from this series besides Wrinkle in Time is Many Waters, which features Sandy and Dennis, and they go back in time to see a great moment in history, and I don't want to give anything more away than that. Other books that you might enjoy, if you like the faith or inspirational elements, C.S. Lewis also wrote a space trilogy. Some people like that book. I really like his Narnia books, but the space trilogy is a little bit really slow moving, but it has some interesting elements, some philosophy in there. Ted Decker's Circle series is a little bit sci-fi thriller and has some faith elements in there. If you are looking for a fantasy book that is kind of like this, The Wizard of Earthsea, So You Want to Be a Wizard, Aragon, those are some great young adult fantasy books. And some other titles that have a female heroine. The Hunger Games series, Matched, those are both dystopian works. The Silver Crown is a book that was also written in the 60s that's kind of children/YA that features a girl. And then most recently, a book called The Gilded Ones, which is this really interesting story from a writer from Africa that infuses culture into this coming of age and hero's journey. Some fantasy elements, some sci-fi. So it's really quite interesting. So those are some read-alikes. If you like this book, you might enjoy those books as well. And I can't wait to see you again to talk a little bit more about some of the features of this novel and to dig into the science from an English teacher's perspective, and then to talk about some of the social elements as well. And I really hope that you see some of the intricacies of this book and come to enjoy it on a different level. Thanks, everybody.